All right. Hey, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Note Closure Show. Hope you're doing well in the special Money Monday edition. Hopefully, you had a great weekend. Things are rock and rolling. This episode, I want to talk about how one of our students, one of our coaching, one of our coaching students, definitely went out there and is kicking butt and taking names. And they are just absolutely doing a wonderful job. This couple. I'm not going to name their names. They're probably going to watch this, which is I just have to say I'm so proud of them what they've done in the last 6 months, really. Actually, 8 months if you think about it. But literally, these two folks have bought some notes and they've created an ROI portfolio of performing notes. They bought their whole focus is performing. They build some cash flow and they had some capital of their own that they did this with, which is great. But they've also used what they've learned and have also started raising some private capital, do some great stuff with it. And so I wanted to go today, kind of breaking down what they have done as investors. And so if you're listening to this, hey, thanks for listening. If you're watching this, make sure you type in comments and I'll gladly try to answer the comments the best I can for you. So what you see on the screen here, it's a map of where they've bought some stuff at. If you're listening to us, I'll break it down a little bit. They bought, in St. Louis, in a couple in Indiana, a couple in Michigan, one in Pennsylvania, one in South Carolina, one in Alabama, one in Mississippi, one in Tennessee, one in Kansas. All right. A couple in Illinois, as well as I believe. So they've bought it along the Midwest, like we always say. You know, most of they have bought a total. Let me share my screen here so you can actually see the portfolio, the spreadsheet that they sent me. So they bought it just to give you a bit of an idea. It's all over the place, and they bought it from a couple of different sellers. But Alabama, Indiana, Missouri, Illinois, South Carolina, Michigan, Kansas, Missouri, Indiana, Missouri again, Ohio, Indiana, Mississippi, Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana. So it's in a few states. Okay. Now, they bought these starting back in September. They came to our 3-day workshop. They went through have gone through the one-on-one coaching. We're kind of getting them wrapped up with that, but they've already bought these 18 notes. Now, these are just a performing. I think they have a couple non-performing ones as well that aren't on the spreadsheet, but they've bought roughly 20 notes in 8 months. They bought 5 in their first 30 days, which is great. Okay. And this started back in September 27th. They bought their first couple, 1, 2, 3, 4. They bought their first notes. And they bought them from a couple different websites. We also worked directly with a couple sellers. We leveraged some of the listing websites to find sellers directly, and they got a bigger tape sent to them versus just dealing with the 1Z or 2Z that they had on these listing websites. Okay. And all in all, let's go through the numbers on here. I'm going to blow this up a little bit. So they bought these. These are all basically head payments. These were all performing or a couple of semi-performing, but they've gotten the bars back on track. And they bought these at an average, just so you know, these are not huge balances. Okay. Anywhere from like 13,000 all the way up to actually 6,000 was a small one they bought anyway. They bought for the heck of it, all the way up to like 93,000. Okay. And, if you figure out that the meaning of this here, let's just look at these real fast. The average note on this was basically just under 28,000. Small balance stuff, just under 28. In total, the UPB on these, this is not legal balance because most of these are performing, is just over 500,000. So they basically bought a $500,000 portfolio, and they bought it for roughly 67 cents on the dollar, 335,000 performing notes and under 70%. Now they paid a little bit more, and they also paid a little bit less for some of these. So like the lowest they paid was 55% of UPB, I think here. Yeah, is that the lowest one? Highest was 83, and the lowest was right at 55%. Okay, so they're falling in line with these lower balances, getting a little bit of stuff. They use their own money, which is great. They're not having to pay off any other money. And if you figure out the cash flow, this is one of the important things. We looked at cash flow. They're using their own money. The lowest P&I payment on this one is what, 274, I think. Yeah, 261 is the lowest payment. The highest payment is that 540, 585. Okay. So between all these 18, 19 notes these 18 notes that they have on this, not the two non-performing, it's generating $7,000 a month, 7,100 a month in cash flow coming in. Okay. That's a total cash flow of coming in of 85,649. That's before expenses. Okay. Now we all know you have less expensive with a performing note than you do with a non-performing note. But what we did is we still throw some numbers in here so you have a bit of an idea expense-wise how to kind of structure this thing. So what I did is I went over and I said, okay, and they were working through pull their expenses, but like Scott, I said, I think the only thing we have is like title review or title expenses on these. We didn't pay for like O&Es on some of these because we were comfortable with the online value and what they looked like. Most of them had current photos. And when you're buying a performing note where there's a ton of equity, and all these have a ton of equity above these. All right. I don't even think we've got the Zillow values on these things. No, we don't have the Zillow values, but they're all well below. I mean, all the value is way above what's owed. Okay. I don't think they're at 50 cents on the dollar in any. I think it's all like 33 cents on the dollar of value. So we still figuring, okay, let's say you put $500. If you figure due diligence costs, $500, that's for like a BPO and O&E and a little marketing time doing maybe collateral view because it's going to cost you probably 150 bucks for collateral view. Let's just say 200 bucks for a BPO, which is not the case. Okay. But we'll say $500 for due diligence costs when you figure time, paying a VA and stuff like that to help. And then the servicing costs. Now, these are all performing. Okay. There's not legal costs associated with. So we said, okay, $25 a month times 12. You're going to pay for servicing roughly $300 a year on each one of these. Okay. So if you add these all up, it's $5,400 in servicing costs and roughly $9,000 in due diligence costs. That's $14,400. You deduct that from the $85,000. Okay. Gross wise, they paid $335,877. They basically paid these at 67 cents on the dollar of the UPB. Okay. Paid $335. Is that right? Yeah. Paid $335 for it. And so if it was just off that, the gross 85,000 divided by the 335, that's a 31.88% return on investment. That's pretty good ROI. Can I get an amen on that? That's a heck of a return, right? But if we figure in due diligence costs, and of course, they didn't pay all this stuff, but if you figure in, okay, normal due diligence costs, I'm paying for a BPO, I'm paying for a title report, and probably going to pay for a collateral review, a little bit of time, my time for a VA to do some due diligence, stuff like that. Okay. They're still netting a 21% cash on cash return. If you figure that, 21.2 to be precise. Okay. Isn't that awesome? I'm so proud of them. Now, here's the thing, they use their own capital on this. And I'm like, okay, that's great because they had it. They set aside that, hey, we were going to get into this. We're going to put some money aside and dive into it. And what did they do? They got excited. Like, oh, we're buying a performing note. Oh, it's going to be a pretty decent yield on these. Now, what they're wanting to do is they're looking like, hey, we want to refinance some more money out of it. So we have that back in our coffers for a rainy day. And so I said, okay, you could do a variety of different things. If we go over here, so they bought these at, on average, at 67 cents on the dollar, okay, they could go over here and say, okay, let's see if we start pulling money out. So they went to 80% of the purchase price. So they kept themselves in the deal. If they kept themselves in the deal, 80% of purchase price, they would basically get $268,000 pulled out of that, okay? 268, if we figure, all right, let's figure this. They would pay times, if they gave somebody an 8% return equals 268 times 0.08. That comes to $21,000 a year in interest. Well, if they've got $85,000 coming in year in, year out, that's still a pretty damn good return to them, right? That's still, or 71, that's still 50 grand in their pocket. All right. They get 268,000 back. And they still they're paying their investor off 21.5, and they got 71.5 the first year after expenses. That's still a $50,000, basically, 49,750 roughly. Okay. that they're basically getting back. Is that a bad day? No, it's not a bad day. That's a phenomenal day. Okay. I make sure, yep, everyone can ask questions in the chat roll, stuff like that. So that's the thing I want you to take a look at. I mean, like at 8%, that's a pretty good. You can find people that have that aren't getting 8% in their IRA right now. Okay. Now, if they borrow just 200 grand back and paid 16,000 for a year at 8% interest per year, they're still going to net a sizable, was that $55,000. And they still keep some skin in the game. They still have roughly 135,000 skin of their own game in this, because they put 335 of their own money in. If they pulled 80% out of what they paid, they still have 32. So basically 65 grand, but they still got a tremendous amount of return. Now, isn't that just, I like to throw that up there for questions. That's 80% of purchase price. If they go 80% of the UPB, they could actually refinance out, pull out 402 and still stay involved, because they still have 20% of the UPB if they wanted to. So they could literally, they paid 335, they bought these at 67 cents on the dollar. If they borrow 80% of the UPB, that's 402. All right. Now 402, let's figure that out real fast. 402,000 is equal to that times 0.08. So if they pulled $400,000, they basically had somebody come in and fund 80% of the UPB. That's going to put 400 grand in their pocket. Okay, 402. They're paying out 32,170 on that money. Well, they're netting, remember, 71, right, after expenses the first year. So they're still going to bring in $29,000 on that in cash flow, and they just put $66,000 in their pocket. Actually, less than that. You take that to 14. Yeah, so they're making 50. They put 50. Exactly. Put an additional 55,000 above and beyond. That's where you're making money on this. Now, the thing they have to be watch out for this, obviously, is that the P&I payments and the balance gets paid down pretty fast. So I wouldn't go at 80%. I would probably do more at the 70% wise, but I'm not them. Whatever they're doing with their money, that's totally fine. It's up to them. But even at 70% of the balance, that's 351. If you figure you're going to pay 0.08. Yeah, so they could get they could get a little bit, they actually could get their money back at 351. That's 335 plus the 14, that's 350. So they basically get back all their investment plus their funds. They're paying out $28,000 a year in interest-only payments, and they're still netting 28,000 minus 71 minus 28. So what is that? $38,000, almost $3,000 a month in positives. Question on this, you always got to be careful though, is seeing when that UPB, that unpaid principal balance number, gets down when you look at the amortization schedule for each one. When's it start to get close where it's paying off and you're running into what you're borrowing from the investors? Now, some of these I wouldn't touch. They're just too skinny. But some of the bigger difference ones, the ones at 70%, you've got some time. You're going to have at least 3 years to either and how do you do that? You basically can pay your investor back by giving them the note, then let him run with it. They like the cash flow, turn the cash flow over to them, refinance them out by selling the note off to another investor. There's a whole variety of different ways to skin a cat on that. But that's for them, it's a pretty phenomenal return on investment. Taking some money, going and buying performing notes, semi-performing or stuff that's performing. And the question always is, how do you find notes at 70% or less, right? Most everybody's trying to buy or sell at 80%. It just takes work. It takes marketing. It takes not just relying what's on a crappy website, all right? And somebody just regurgitating, I want to get 80% of EPB. That's great, but this is a lower balance stuff, or no, I'll offer you 70. It's also finding the motivated sellers who are looking to sell stuff off their portfolio or need to close their portfolio down, right? So that's the thing I wanted to share. I mean, you can go out, if you're looking for 20%, great, go do it yourself. Doesn't mean you're going to I want to make 20% on the money I lend. No. My students, they deserve every bit of this because they worked their butt. They made offers. They made a lot of offers. We worked on this, and if you look back, they bought these from, if I go back and look at this, from September through January. So the matter of 5 months, they bought these, September 27th to January 26th. Yeah. So So October, November, December, January. So in 4 months, actually, 4 months they bought these. Now, that's a pretty good return to help them get to the point where they're looking to eventually retire. The reason I put this up here is you all can do the same thing, ladies and gentlemen. You know, $3,000 a month in cash flow is really good. $5,000 a month in cash flow is really good. It's great if you've got your own funds, but if you don't have your own funds, then put the same thing to work. Go out and borrow some money, get it a decent, give them your investors a decent return, 8% for not to do anything, to get cash flow back on a quarterly basis, and go arbitrage. Put yourself in the middle of these deals. Go find the good deals. Don't try to wholesale them. I know that's what everybody wants to do. I just want to flip it. Okay. Okay. Could they have flipped it? Yeah. Let's go back here to the tape and take a look at the flip. They could have flipped these if they wanted to. They could turn around if they look at 80% of the 80% of UPB is 12. So in this one, if they wanted to buy it and flip it, they could have maybe flipped this at 80%. So they got it at, so we're talking 335. So they could, if they bought these 20 notes at 335, we're going to contract at 335, they could have flipped it for 402. That's $65,000 roughly, $66,000 in wholesale fees. Okay. That's okay. That's not a bad day. But guess what? That 66,000 is all they get paid on. Whereas if they stayed into the deal, guess what? They're making more money, 71 grand a year. That's where the mind shift has got to change. They get feed them once, it's great. They get that up front. And I get it. Sometimes it makes more sense for me to get 50 grand up front versus 50 grand over here. I totally understand that. And they could flip that and make a little bit of profit. But wouldn't it make more sense to have something that's going to cash flow for you on a monthly basis? It's still paying the investor 8% and staking in and doing a phenomenal job of just servicing and findings with a servicing company, paying $25 a month. And this 14 grand here, you can put this at a cost, they probably spent half of that realistically. So that's really $4,500 or less on the actual determining the value of the market. 5,400, that's going to be pretty much a fixed cost because it's servicing on these notes. But it's a good day. It's a good day to be alive. It's a good day to be a note investor. But people always ask me, how do we find these deals? How we find it? We find it because we do the marketing like we've always talked about in drip marketing campaigns. We identify sellers and reach out to the sellers directly. Okay. If they're on some website and they got one, if they got one, they probably have more than one. Okay. And then it's just making connections. One of the tapes came from one of my past coaching students from like 5 years ago who's bought 300, 400 notes and is trying to close out a portfolio. And those relationships are coming in handy. All right. Yep. These students, they paid for my coaching and I helped introduce them to that seller and help them do the deal. That's what we're here for. Questions, comments, concerns. I don't mean this to scare you guys, but do you guys understand where the power of this comes in? It doesn't have to be $1 million portfolio. It doesn't have to be a $5 million portfolio. It could be onesie twosie notes. And that's the whole point. If you figure they bought these in 4 months, that's basically one a week on average. They sped it up. Okay. If you go and watch the Don't Give Up on Retirement podcast episode where we broke down the numbers, these folks fall into that. I don't say baby, they're the same age as I am, Generation X. So they don't have to do that, but they work hard. They want to put their money to work and make it, and their money's making a phenomenal return for them. 20% now. If they refinance back out and pull their own money out, then it's even doing better. Infinite rate of return because they're not using their own money at that point. And of course, we only have technically 4 months. We haven't annualized this where one was bought in September and the other was just bought in January. We get that. But basically, that's how an annualized 21%. The first year is going to be a little cookie cutter because you have some that are only paying for a month or two and stuff like that. I get it. But the point I'm trying to make here, ladies and gentlemen, is these deals exist if you know where to look, know what to say, know what not to say, and how to negotiate. Okay? And I'm very proud of what these folks have done. I'm so proud of them. And, they're coachable. We met weekly. Sometimes it was a Zoom call and sometimes it was a quick phone call. And we looked at the numbers, say, this makes sense. I need you to fade it down or reduce this or kill a bunch. I don't know how many offers till they made. Probably, I don't know, probably 100 more, 200 more of those on those offers to find that 18. But that 18 is still worth it. You know what I mean, ladies and gentlemen? making offers to see what's accepted. And you just got to make enough of them. You can't wait for all your ducks to be in a perfect row. Otherwise, if you're waiting for the money, you're not going to do it. And so they have the money, which is great, but they could very easily, before they bought the last chunk in January, they were already talking with investors, already talking about what they were doing. They were using the case studies that we provide that if you've been through our workshop, you get access to, talking about, hey, here's what we're doing. And usually they have their pitch deck and they've got their website and other things to help them raise capital and really knock it out of the park. Question here for you. All right, so Anna asked a question here. This is awesome. Can you explain when you make an offer based off of UPB versus legal balance? I've heard there are times a judge will not require legal to be paid. Okay, so it all depends on the length of the legal balance. So the legal balance is going to be your UPB, your unpaid principal balance, plus all the late payments, okay? And depending on how far behind that borrower is, you've heard it, it's something called the statute of limitations. And every state's a little bit different on statute of limitations for mortgage debt. Sometimes it's 4 years, sometimes it's 10 years. It just varies on the state. So that's what you have to look like. So like, I'll give you an example. So these were all basically performing. All right. The legal balance, UPB, were very, very right at similar. Okay. You're going to see more of a bigger legal balance in a non-performing note. Okay. Now, when you look at legal balance, that's usually going to be higher than a UPB. And then you got to look at value of the property. What's the actual value of the property in it? So when the property is valued at 100, but the legal balance is 150, what are you going to bid? Well, you're not going to bid off the legal balance. You're going to bid probably 65, 70%, depending on where it's at, off the value, because that's 100. So that would be, you make an offer at somewhere around 60 to 70, right? But let's flip it around. Let's say, no, the legal balance is only 100 and the value is 150. Okay, difference there. Think about this. It's different. Well, you're not going to bid. Okay, you're not going to bid 100 on this one. Okay, that's 67% of the value. You got to go off the legal balance. There, you're probably going to have to bid 80 cents on the dollar of the legal balance at that point. So that would be 80,000 on that one, because the legal balance is 100 on that one when the value is 50. There's equity there. Does that make sense? You got to understand the difference. UBB is great, legal, and then also where does the value roll into it? If there's equity, I'd say 25, 50 grand above the legal balance, then 80% of the legal balance is kind of where they want you to be at. Obviously, you were able to work with them to get below that because they were lower balances. All right. If there is, if there's negative equity, then you're not bidding off the legal balance. Then you're going to be bidding off the value of the property or the as-is condition. And going back to what you have to look at, I'll give you an example. Let's say, like Florida, I think it's like a 10-year or 8-year statute of limitation. Okay. Let's just say it's 4 years. Well, let's say it's been 8 years or 10 years. Let's just say it's been 10 years since the borrower made a payment. So 10 years, and they owe this huge legal balance. Okay. Well, if there's 10 years paid, but the state's legal statute of limitations is only 4 years, you can only go after the most recent 4 years. You can't go after the oldest 6. So you're saying goodbye to 6 years or whatever that balance is off the legal balance. And that's what you need to know when you're making an offer. And that's why, when was the last payment? When was the last collection? Because if the borrower's made payments, they made a payment here or there and the borrower collected, that restarts the statute of limitations. Okay. And we had an investor of ours, a student of ours who was going to buy a mortgage note, and the borrower wanted to make a payment to reset the statute of limitations. I said, don't accept the one payment. Make them come to the table with 4 or 5 months, because if they just make one payment, that's going to restart the statute of limitations, that they can drag this out on their hand and not have to pay you for another 90 days to restart the foreclosure process. Okay. Does that make sense, Anna? And you'll see some of these estimated legal balance. Okay. Well, when was the last payment made? Oh, now, more than 5 years ago. Well, then I'm only going to go after the most recent 4 years, basically. Okay. And then you've got to figure, okay, so instead of 10 years times 12 months is 120 payments, 120 payments times their P&I payment is roughly what you figure out how to figure the legal balance, add that to the UPB, give or take a little bit. But yeah, it's the same thing. If it's this huge amount in 10 years, this is why I always like, I don't like those 10 years aspects of things, especially if it's occupied, because then the bar is going to fight you on it. If it's vacant, okay, it's a different story. Vacant bars moved away, they're probably not going to fight the foreclosure, then go after the whole thing. But it's just, you got to take it a little bit more in stride and take a look at what's going on. Does that make sense for you, Anna? Try to be as clear as mud on that. So once again, let's recap it. Look at the UPB, and then look at the legal balance. What's the difference? Okay. And then compare that number to the value of the property as is, not after repair value. After repair value doesn't exist in notes. Look at the as is value. So if there is this huge legal balance above the value of the property, where there's negative equity, you're going to be bidding off the value of the property. If there is equity, values way above the legal balance, then sellers are probably going to want you coming around 70 to 80% of the legal balance, knowing that if you do foreclose, you're going to get paid in full at the foreclosure auction. And that's why you got to be tricky on this. You just can't run ROI numbers. You got to go back and say, okay, if I do foreclose on this where they haven't paid, I got to make sure I'm going to be at like $10,000 to $15,000 difference, at least on a minimum, if I foreclose it for my foreclosure costs. Okay. And as great, would getting licensed in Georgia be a good use of time? It looks like there are good deals and lots of notes there, since there is a barrier to entry since you need a license. Starting off, no, it's not worth your time, Anna. You have to go get a mortgage broker's license in Georgia. What it makes sense to do is just go get you a self-directed IRA. There's plenty of other states to make offers on. Okay. Going and getting a license and paying to go become a mortgage broker in Georgia so you can buy in there is not an effective use of time starting out at all. Okay. Plus, since it's a it's a faster foreclosure state, it's not a discount for the most part. You can still buy notes in Georgia by using your self-directed IRA and making that the purchasing entity and borrowing money from somebody else's stuff, or just partner up with a investor who already has their license in Georgia and give them 10% of the profits. That's what I would do. But no, waiting to stay to get a license and going through that process in Georgia is not worth its time. No, there's plenty of other states to buy in. Quit worrying about getting every duck in a row. Go make some offers. Make some offers. Send the damn email. Make some offers and get the ball rolling. Okay. Any questions from anybody else out there? Let's see, we got online. Mark, do you have any questions? Don, any questions? Just trying to help you guys get rocking and rolling. Give me a second here. I really get excited for my students. I was so excited when these coaching students went out and are buying. When they sent me this spreadsheet, I knew their portfolio was doing well because we had actually, spent the time and looked at it and helped them make offers on it and helped them adjust it and fade it a little bit, reduce it. So I knew it was going to be a great return to them. And just very proud of I always love it when people take action. And like I said, they got a lot of hand-holding being a one-on-one coaching student, and that's what we're here to help out with. But you guys, anybody out there can go raise $1 million in private capital in the next 90 days. You can go out and find deals if you will just market like I tell you to market. If you're going to be in Florida and you're looking for an IRA company, just go to NewView. NewView's out of Lake Mary, Florida. They're formerly Entrust. NewView IRA, Lake Mary, Florida. They're about the same. Okay. NewView IRA is who I'd probably recommend down in Florida. We've spoken at their event before, and it's nice to have something close to you if you can. Obviously, you're in Ohio and you got an equity trust account, or you go to an event and a company's there that's going to waive their fees. Great. They're all about the same. It's not that big deal. I think, Anna, you're in Jacksonville, and I think they host an event in Jacksonville once a year. It might be Orlando, but you're just a couple hours away from their main offices, and they've got a good team over there. Awesome. Great. Tell them I sent you. Any other questions, comments, returns, guys? We talked, this last Monday night, we went through that tape of 349 notes. I'm surprised I didn't get more questions from people about making offers on it. That's what we're here for. There's times if you wanted to, you could still probably make some offers on those if you wanted to. And it's better to get the ball rolling and start making offers now instead of waiting around. I know that one of our other coaching students is making, about a dozen offers, on at least 8 or more on some of those after this weekend and stuff like that. So there's opportunities. I know that the seller was still accepting offers even after the timeline. I'm like, he or she probably did not get a lot of offers in. because they just don't make it very clear. So anyway, we're here to help. As always, feel free to reach out, book a call with me at talkwithscottcarson.com. Talkwithscottcarson.com, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you for listening. Big kudos to my coaching students once again. If you're looking to make somewhere between a 20 and 30% ROI, you can follow the same game plan, the same path that we help them do it. And all you got to do is be coachable and get signed up for our one-on-one coaching. We'll be glad to help you out. They have made their investment back over tenfold. We know that they will. 400% more. You figure that roughly than what they paid for our one-on-one coaching. So we're here to help you. That's our biggest goal, is to help you find deals, buy deals, start putting some cash flow in your hands, and help you help you get to the top. So go out, take some action, everybody, and we'll